I'm going to show you two different true GMT designs from Japan. I really like both of them. There is no secret here. I would like either one of these in my rotation on my wrist. I think they're both worthy, so to speak. So although I will favor one over the other, I'm not trying to insult you if you prefer the other over the one that I prefer, if that makes sense. That disclosure out of the way, let's talk about when Seiko is actually better than Grand Seiko. It doesn't happen all that often, but it has happened historically from time to time with specific models. And again, I think I have an instance here where it's happening, and I would like to showcase these two beautiful true GMT sports pieces. Now, the LX from Seiko is not better in every single instance. The Grand Seiko does a couple things better, but on the whole, for the majority, I think the LX actually does more things better, if that makes sense. And let's talk about those. So both of them, crown at the 4 o'clock position, lovely curvaceous cases with clean lines of delineation between very well executed brushing and polishing. These are both made in the same facility at the Shinsu Watch Studio in Japan. One is just branded Seiko, and one is branded Grand Seiko. There isn't a ton of difference between the two, so let's get to some of the strengths of each one. The Grand Seiko, I prefer the 40.5 millimeter case size. I think it's just a very universal size that most of you will agree with me on. But when it comes to these Japanese sports pieces with the crown at the 4, the way these are constructed and executed, you can actually get away with wearing a larger size because they wear smaller. They wear very unique. They end up being very practical and comfortable and versatile on wrist. And for reference, my wrists are 7.25 inches in circumference. So although I say I like the 40.5, I can absolutely pull off the 45 millimeter SNR 051 that to me looks a little bit more classic Seiko in the design language. There is that one element on the Grand Seiko, the bezel, that really reminds you of the Rolex Explorer 2 when it comes to the font, when it comes to the conical profile and the finish work. I think this would be stronger if it was a little bit more stylized, a little bit more Grand Seiko-esque. But it's a minor point here. Still a great watch. I think the LX just looks a little bit more quintessential Seiko to me. And that is design language that I just eat up. I really like a good Seiko design, a sports piece like this LX. Very reminiscent of the Marine Master, which had its kind of its design roots with a watch that came out in 1968, which was really the first professional diver that Seiko released back then. They had done the 62 MAS, excuse me, but this was the first very robust 300-meter professional diver. The design inspiration has a lineage traced from that second-generation diver to this LX SNR 051. I don't think you can quite say the same with the Grand Seiko SBGM. Another thing I like about the Grand Seiko is the incredible applied markers that carry linear striations that grab light, they grab reflections, they're very dynamic, they raise off of the face of this olive green sunray dial, and you even get a little bit of the rainbow dispersed on these appliques, depending on the light that you view the face of the watch in or the angle. It really, they look so dang good. The movement within is a traditional automatic movement, a 9S66 caliber with a 3-day power reserve and an acceptable daily deviation of -3 to +5 seconds per day, just a little bit tighter than COSC levels of accuracy. Now let's compare this to the LX, which again I've mentioned is larger. You can pull off a larger size, as I mentioned, with a Seiko design. This one is crafted out of full titanium with a super hard coating that will help deflect minor hairline wear marks and dings, dents, and scratches that will happen as you wear and use your sports piece. This one has 100 meters of water resistance compared to 200 in the Grand Seiko, but this one has a much nicer execution of the sapphire crystal, the anti-reflective treatment. The bezel has a sapphire crystal covering, So, it's going to it's going to do better at deflecting scratches and whatnot. It will also have a little bit more light play, and you can rotate it in either direction. It's a sliding action, which is nice as you use this as a traveler's piece. You can't move the steel fixed bezel on the SBGM. And as I flip-flop between different macro shots and wrist rolls between these two watches, I think it will become apparent that the finish work, the level of the finishing on the case and bracelet is going to be the same on both watches, but definitely that anti-reflective treatment application will be far superior, noticeably superior on the Seiko Lux. Now, the movement within the Seiko LX is the 5R66, which is a spring drive movement with a 3-day power reserve, an acceptable daily deviation window of plus or minus 1 second per day. It's not a traditional automatic piece, but it's not a quartz piece. It's a hybrid type of system that is incredibly accurate, and you have this absolutely smooth sweep, a mesmerizingly smooth sweep of a constant release of energy into the hand. It really looks sharp. Some watch enthusiasts critique this as having no soul, of being cold, not having a heartbeat. And I think that's silly. I don't see that at all. I think this has a very warm allure and appeal. It's a great piece of technology that's going into the future. And I don't know. I don't want to knock that myself. Now, this will have a lunar surface textured dial that I find more dynamic than the olive sunray green dial of the Grand Seiko. This is subtle. It's not overly dynamic like you can find on some other Seiko and Grand Seiko products that may look dated over the decades. This one, I think, carries that visual interest. It's a lovely color, but it's not overly pretentious, I guess you could say. It's a really sharp execution. This one is a limited edition. It's a USA exclusive, and you do have a hidden micro adjustment system in the titanium clasp in this bracelet. So I think that's a nice thing, a really nice thing compared to the fixed holes, those anchoring positions in the adjustable clasp of the Grand Seiko. Overall, very similar design language, similar price. I think some will say, Bruce, you're crazy. The Grand Seiko is clearly better. Well, you know what? It's not clear to me at all. Again, I prefer the smaller size. I think it has more water resistance. That's a nice thing. It's not a diver, but more I think could equate to better in this instance. And we do have those incredible applied markers that just look so dang good. But everything else, the finishing is comparable. The titanium with the hard clear coating, I think, would be considered superior on the LX. I like the fact that we have a rotating bezel. We have a sapphire crystal that has the better anti-reflective treatment. We have the nicer texture on the dial. And then we also have the upgraded spring drive caliber within, and the exclusivity factor with the limited edition nature of this SNR release, this USA exclusive. I think on the whole, the majority of the elements are better on the Seiko. This is one of those instances when Seiko does it better than Grand Seiko at $200 less the price. But what do you guys think? Which one would you choose, and what influences factor into that decision? I'd like to read the comments here from you that have taken the time to watch this video. Thank you for that. Have a great day. Reach out with questions. I'll see you guys next time.